John, when a defendant comes in and hires you, becomes a client, and you right away for discovery, prosecutor, if they're still using the mail, will send you this great big package of stuff, and it's a kind of an intimidating bunch of papers that you get, and there's no telling what sequence they're going to be in or anything like that.
You just got to put them in the right sequence,
that's
all.
Well, what we've done today for our presentation is try to coordinate them in the same sequence that the Supreme Court had in the Chun order. That's not only in the body of the opinion, but it's also in the appendix at the end. And they list specific items of discovery, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first thing I want to talk about is probably the most important piece of discovery of all is the alcohol influence report. I want to kind of go through this step by step so that everybody will be familiar with it and see what it means and try to relate it to some of the other discovery documents, okay?
Right, this is actually the cornerstone of the whole package, and everything will flow off of this.
All right, let's start off with the summons number. Now, why do they have the summons number on here in the first place? Do you have any idea?
Well, obviously they're going to try to coordinate this to the actual ticket that's given to the defendant. The idea being that when one is arrested, supposedly the officer has enough probable cause to issue a DWI complaint, so he can plug that in.
Right.
But others have said that, look, you can plug in any summons number there. It doesn't necessarily have to be the DWI summons. But it's, again, just to tie it in to the particular case with that particular defendant. My
experience has been that sometimes you'll get cases where your client has a very low blood alcohol level, maybe on the 0.04, 0.05, 0.06 area, and that'll be borne out by the alcohol influence report. You'll see the summons number up here, and I think what happens is the police officers who are entering this into the computer that's associated with the Alcotest, they've already made a decision to arrest the defendant. They already have probable cause to arrest him. He's going to be getting a ticket, so they write the ticket on here. They just don't know what the BAC is going to be. I guess the philosophy is that the BAC is additional proof of the defendant's intoxication. So you do see that from time to time. Now, what's this business about sequential file number? What does that mean?
Now, the Alcotest device generates a piece of paper for every individual function. We're now talking about the subject breath test. That's the alcohol influence report form. Every time a function is run,
right,
the machine identifies that function with a sequential file number printed on the piece of paper that it generates.
So would it be correct to say that this is the 249th time that this machine has done something in its lifetime?
Something. Calibration, part 1 control tests, linearity tests, solution changes, alcohol influence reports, and there's some other more esoteric functions that we really don't need to be concerned with. But every time a function is done, a sequential file number is generated.
So someone who's looking at this, they would know that prior to the day that this defendant got arrested, this instrument had done 248 functions. There'd be 248 times that it was called upon to do something, and this was number 249 involving this particular defendant. Is that correct?
That's correct, and in fact you'll see references, cross-references to other functions done on this machine within a particular, what we call a calibration cycle.
Okay, so sequential file number means the number of things that it's done during its lifetime. Would you say that's a good definition?
That's a good definition.
Now, I see here there's some basic pedigree information. Is this entered in by the officer?
Yes, it is. He does the last name, first name, middle initial, date of birth, gender, height, weight, driver's license, issuing state. That's his information, along with his own identifying information in the next section, which is arresting officer information.
You know, it seems funny to me that they make the officer put in the age and also the date of birth, but this is a computer. Couldn't the computer figure out how old the guy is?
I don't know if I could figure it out, but that's another story.
I also noticed that they have the gender on here, male and male, female, and as a part of the Chun decision, I guess that's going to become significant in the future, where if you're a female and you're over the age of 60, there has to be special accommodations made for you. So that'll probably be a very significant data field in the future.
That's true. That'll probably tie into the actual algorithm that does the calculation for the breath temperature.
Now,
I mean the breath result, I should say. Is
there any height or weight issue? I know that you have to put it on here. In fact, this last guy weighs 295 pounds. Holy mackerel! Must have had a lot to drink that day. Is there any significance in terms of the test that the instrument needs to know in terms of determining blood alcohol levels by height or weight?
Not according to the program as it's written in New Jersey. Germany, for example, has a more sophisticated program that does take some of these different variables into account, but not here in New Jersey.
Arresting officer now in this case is Officer Lee. There's his badge number. The arrest day was on the 27th of January in 2008 at 19:03 time.
Standard time.
Standard time, okay, that's what that S
So
means?
that big S means, that's
All
right.
right. And I notice on here too that the arresting officer is not the same as the person who was operating the instrument, so it may be that this particular officer at that time was not authorized to run the alcotest. Would you agree with that?
Maybe, or maybe a departmental policy to have 2 officers involved in the arrest.
Okay. Now the next thing, its instrument is Alcotest 7110 MK3C, and it talks about serial number. What does that mean?
The serial number is the unique identifying number. It's generally coded to date of manufacture. That's assigned to a particular device, and you're going to see this serial number on all of the paperwork that is generated by the Alcotest device, regardless of what function it's performing.
So documents that would be supportive of this instrument should all have that number to prove that it relates back to this particular instrument.
That's correct. That's what's going to tie it all together.
So as we go through these, we should keep an eye for ARWF-0359. That's the name of this machine, so to speak.
That's right.
All right, now, beyond that, it has location and different columns here. Can you talk about these columns?
Well, sure. Let's look at this next section entitled Instrument. You'll see that it lists basic information about that. The model number, which should never change, the serial number, the location here in Lawrence Township. And then there's a first column that is essentially a list of sequential file numbers keyed to the different functions that are performed. The first function is the calibration file number. When we look at that form later, you'll see it's a very short form. That's basically the time when a coordinator puts a solution through the machine and tells the machine this is what a 1.0 is.
Okay.
Certification file number relates to what is the document that's entitled Part 1 Control Test. This is a series of 3 simulator samples that are tested at the 0.10 level to see if they come in between 0.095 and 0.105. If they do, then they're deemed to be within acceptable tolerances and it's acceptable. That function in this particular instance was run on the sequential file number 00204. The third test is the linearity file number. The sequential file number is 00205, and this ties into the document we'll see later where 3 different strengths of simulator are run, 04, 08, and 0.16. The idea being that those different strengths are kind of like the marks on a ruler. We want to make sure that if we're going to use this ruler to measure a blood alcohol strength or a breath alcohol strength, that we know it's going to be reliably placed in relation to the different hash marks that are identified at 0.04, 0.08, and 0.16. Now, with every breath test, and indeed in every function, a simulator solution is run as a control test. And that simulator solution is tested with the solution file number. It's in a simulator, which is a jar, an enclosed space in which the solution is placed. Inside that jar, the liquid is heated to 34 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 0.2 degrees Celsius, a very tight tolerance, and that's reflected also in this documentation. The strength of that solution is a little bit higher than a 0.10 because the solution strength, basically what's happening is the alcohol molecules in that solution are going to migrate into the air just above that solution.
The headspace.
That's what we call it, the headspace. And that at a 0.1226 alcohol strength in the solution, at 34 degrees Celsius, at atmospheric pressure at sea level,
Right.
0.1226 will be a 0.1000.
Okay.
And plus or minus, of course, our tolerances, which are plus or minus 0.005. So that solution file is reflected in 00247. And then finally, on this particular form, we see the sequential file number 00249. I'm going to assume that there was some poor guy that got tested in between the last time they changed the solution and our hero here, the unnamed subject.